when my work takes me places I don't want to go. Christ before me, when my heart aches with sorrow as I hit the road. Christ be with me, when the care of my family takes all that I have. Christ within me, when I'm worn and exhausted, ashamed that I'm mad. Christ defend me. And I rise up today in a strength that is not my own. I'm held by the promise of God that I'm never alone. When I'm tossed to the side and I wanna give up, Christ beside me. When I'm busting my butt but it's never enough, Christ beside me. When I work hard but someone else gets the reward, God's eyes see me. When I ask for promotion but they shut the door, God's ears hear me. And I rise up today in a strength that is not my own. And I'm held by the promise of God that I'm never alone. And I rise up today in a strength that is not my own. And I'm held by the promise of God that I'm never alone. When I climb the first steps toward a long-held dream, Christ above me. When I leap out in faith and I hope to find wings, Christ beneath me.
Thanks, guys. Kevin, remind me the name of that song and why you wanted to start with it today.
Patrick's Day.
That is words that come from some writings of St. Patrick. So there you go. Get your St. Patrick's Day weekend kicked off to a lovely, beautiful start. It's not often that we hear those words on St. Patrick's Day, right? And it's this beautiful Christ be with us in all the things that we do, wherever we go. Christ is with you. Christ is with me. So what a lovely way to start our morning this morning. As we have felt some spring in the air the last couple of days. I walked in this morning when it was still raining, so my head was down and just trying to get in the building, right? And then I walked past the front doors, and there are things popping out the ground. Did you see that? Some of the flowers are starting to pop out of the ground. Such a gift, such a gift. So we're glad you're here this morning. Thank you for being here. If you're online, we are glad you are joining us as well in that way. Just a couple of things that you need to be aware of. This week, we're going to have a couple of opportunities for some work days. So Wednesday night and Saturday morning will be a few hours to come to maybe get those garden beds a little bit more prepared for the rest of the flowers to pop up, to do some painting in the cafe, to get that ready for a new space, and just some general cleaning and work projects around the building. If you could sign up with that QR code right there and let us know which day you'll be able to join us. Both are welcome. you are absolutely welcome to come both, but it's a lot. So if you can pick a couple of hours on one of those days, we'd love to have you here. Mark, which one's up next? Thanks. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to have a party. Almost 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks. Every year we throw a party for our volunteers because, well, we like to party. And because you all do so much in the life of this community, and we wanted to acknowledge that. And this is the one day where y'all are not allowed to do a thing. Chris and I will take care of it all. So, oh shoot, I put something wrong. I put a date wrong. Yeah, I know, because we changed it. It's not your fault. We changed it this morning. Ignore what's written in your bulletin. This is correct. It is also, somebody click the link for me, make sure that's correct. Friday night, March 28th, we're going to go to Garfield Park Gym, play some pickleball, have some snacks and drinks, and just celebrate what we get to do together. So we hope you can make it. Somebody confirm that date for me yet? It's great. Love it when I make mistakes. It's my favorite. Love it. I'm modeling humility. How about that? It's not right. Also normal. Thank you, Bethany. It is not right on there. I'm going to fix it here in just a little bit and then go crawl in a hole. It's fine. Just kidding. I'm absolutely kidding. Bethany just wants to give me a hug right now, and I love it so much. All right. Next week, Sunday, right after worship, we are going to offer some space to process all the things that are going on in our world, specifically in the political climate in our country right now, to say, if we want to be faithful followers of Jesus, how on earth do we respond to all that is happening? So we're going to have a couple of weeks throughout the next couple of months here that this is available. So we'll start at 11:45-ish downstairs. We'll have some snacks, but you're welcome to bring a lunch if you would like. We'll have the nursery with movies going for kids. We will also have a Zoom option, so if you need to get home and then hop on Zoom, we can do that as well. We're specifically doing the Zoom option so that you can also invite others to join. Yes, it's maybe easier for some of you to get home if you have little kids, and that might make your morning easier, but we also want you to be able to invite other people to join you. So if you think that is a conversation that friends, family members would find meaningful, we invite you to invite them as well. Okay? All right. That is most of the announcement-y type things I have today. Now we want to celebrate a couple of things. Do you remember in 2024, we had a goal to welcome some new families, some new households into the life of the branch? We did some things intentionally to make sure we were a little bit more hospitable, to put our name out in the world a little bit more, so we could welcome some new households. And guess what? We did. We want to celebrate, and a few of those people have chosen to become official partners with us. If you don't know what a partner is, it's what we call members, but we call them partners for a specific reason. It's because these are the people who choose to say, yep, I'm all in, you can count on me, we're going to do this thing together. It does not mean if you're not a partner, you can't fully participate in the life of the branch. I hope you all know that you absolutely can fully participate in the life of the branch. But these are people who just take one more step to say, yep, I'm all in. And they get to vote on super fun things like steward nominations and budget. So I know, right? Super fun. So we wanted to celebrate a couple of people. We'll celebrate more in the coming weeks, but the ones who are here, at least partially here today, we wanted to celebrate them today. So I'm going to embarrass you all. Katie Madison, would you please stand up? Katie has officially joined us as a partner. Nate DeWard and Andrea, who's not here. Noelle! Stand up, Noelle. We just welcomed Noelle, too. Look at what just happened. We are so glad that you all are a part of our community as well. And then the Vanderwalls. We want to welcome you as well. Ben and 3 of the kids are here today. Sarah and a couple others are off at a dance competition, so welcome. We are so glad that you all are a part of this community as well. Did we clap for them yet? Let's clap for everybody. Yay! You all bring new perspectives and new life and new energy, and we are grateful for it. And we love getting to know you all and your stories as well. All right. Sarah is going to come up and lead us in a call to worship, and then we're going to sing a song. So I invite you, if you would like to stand up and join Sarah in these words.
Good morning. Come as you are. If you have deep faith, or your faith has run dry, if you know every scripture or none at all, if you have calloused hands and live your faith through good works, or if you kneel at God's feet with a million hungry questions, come as you are. This is God's house. None are turned away. All are welcome here.
You're not afraid of our questions. You're not offended by our fear. We just really want to trust you. So we bring what we have. Would you meet us here? Lord, you have told us you're for us, and even when we don't understand, and we are leaning on that promise, believing you are who you say you are. You don't see us for our failures. You always find the best in us. And we may stray, but you are faithful. So we fall into you. We know you'll raise us up. Lord, you have told us you're for us, and even when we don't understand, and we are leaning on that promise, believing you are who you say you are. Yeah. You said you are the only way, truth, and the light. You stay the same, oh great I am, our reason why. You said you are the only way, truth, and the light. You stay the same, oh great I am, our reason why. You said you are the only way, truth, and the light. You stay the same, oh great I am, our reason why. Oh Lord, Lord, you have told us you're for us, even when we don't understand. And you are leaning on that promise, believing you are who you say. Lord, you have told us you're for us, even when we don't understand. And we are leaning on that promise, believing you are who you say. Believing you are who you say. Believing you are who you say you are.
You may sit. I feel so powerful. I have the power to have people sit. We're going to be engaging in the scripture in a few ways this morning. So if you could listen to a story about two women. This is from Luke 10, 37 through 42. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed them into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over these details. There's only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her."
Thank you, Sarah. That's the story we're going to dwell on a little bit this morning. We wanted to do that in a few different ways. So you heard the story. For many of you, it might be a familiar story. Now I want to read a poem that is based on that story. There's a few different sections of this poem. So I'm going to read a little bit and then ask a question and invite you to sit for a minute in just some silent reflection. We'll do that a couple of times. And then we'll use some art to engage this story as well. So I invite you to hear these words. They will also be on the screen as well. This poem is called Wildfire. I can picture it. Salty sweat accumulating in her bangs, the scent of toasted sesame seeds, crushed oregano, sumac, and cumin, flour on her hands, painting streaks of white in her hair when she ties it back, the sweet date she samples, the way it stretches and clings to the back of her teeth, leaving the taste of honey in her mouth. Can you smell the herbs? Can you feel the stickiness of the dates and the honey? I can picture Martha in that kitchen, plating meals, eager to see their eyes close, their heads nod, to hear the swell of approval that rises from their lips. And I can picture her sister, brows scrunched, fingers fidgeting, wishing for a pen, for a paper, for a way to write it down. I can see her mouth part like a fish in the air, questions forming and reforming on her curious lips. I can see her lean in, knees tucked, eyes bright. I can see her imagining the world he dreamed of. Can you hear her mind flying, her gears turning? Are there questions of curiosity coming to your mind right now? And I can picture how, for generations, this story of two brazen women in Scripture, a story of two women so close to Jesus, may have felt like an untamed wildfire. I can picture the way we put these women in boxes. I can imagine how people saw their full hearts, their untamed energy, and decided to label that as good and bad, better and worse. I can imagine how Martha's questions were interpreted as nagging, or the interruption interpreted as needy. Who have you put in a box? Or maybe how have you put yourself in a box of good and bad, of better or worse? I can picture how it happened. But what if it all was more beautiful than that? What if these sisters discovered a ministry of cooking? What if they discovered the faithfulness of learning, the kind of friendship that allows you to ask questions, or something in between? I can imagine it. Can you? We're going to put an image up on the screen here. This is the story that you have heard, that we have engaged with, in art form. So take a minute, look at the image. What do you notice? Or what do you wonder about? Take a minute to look at it, and then we'll talk about those things. What do you see? What do you notice? Jesus has his hands on both of them. Oh, I hadn't even seen that before, Katie. Yeah. What else do you see? The energy flow of a circle. Yeah. Yeah, around all three of them, right? It's not either or, but both and. Yeah. There's a cross shape behind Jesus. I didn't see that one either. Thanks, Ben. Blue and yellow make green. So Mary and Martha come together for the color of Jesus in that picture. Yeah, beautiful. Anybody else wonder anything about this picture, about this image? It would have been unusual in that day for women to ask questions. It would have been unusual in that day for women to be that close to a teacher, right? Yeah. Well, this image is beautiful and lovely, as all of them are from Sanctified Art, and holds so very much. If you get a closer look, you see the fabric of all of the people, and there's symbols in there as well. So this will pop up. I don't think it has yet. It will pop up on our social media accounts this week. So if you haven't followed us on Facebook or Instagram, I feel like a social media influencer right now, but we've been posting daily some of these prompts and some of these poems and images. So it's a lovely practice for Lent as well, if you haven't joined us in that. All right. Kiddos, if you are 5th grade and younger, you're welcome to head on back to the back. Don't go downstairs yet with Amy and Noelle. They're going to go talk more about this story and do some wondering as well. As we do each week, we're going to send them with a blessing. The words will be up here on the screen. Friends, may your time together be filled with wonder, joy, and friendship. You are loved. We'll see you back here soon.
You all are really quite a remarkable group of people. And I'm not just pandering here. You really are. You're a unique group of people. I'm very grateful for you. And I'm just mindful of that as we're reflecting on this artwork. My thought was, you all should be preaching because your insights are quick, and I think they're thoughtful and they're deep. And you'll hear, I think, some of the things that were said out here in the next few minutes together. So we're talking here in Lent about everything in between. We're looking at two words each week that often kind of get set up in our minds as opposites or things that oppose one another. And we're asking the question, is it not either or, but perhaps both and? And our words this week, we'll get to in just a moment, are that same sort of, there's that same sort of tension in them. Much like there's tension in this story between Mary and Martha, which is not the only story in the Bible, of course, to showcase sibling rivalry, right? The Bible's full of stories when you stop and think about it, beginning with Cain and Abel, on up through this story and beyond, of siblings who are in tension with each other. And if you have a sibling, this is not hard to imagine, of course, right? I remember as a young person growing up with 3 brothers, we, in the summertime, had to tend the garden of my family. And we did not have a little, hobby garden. We had a garden that was easily the size of this room, and I, at least in my childhood memory, would say it's larger, and Matt's nodding in agreement. And we'd work this garden, every day it seemed like, just being taken advantage of by our parents. One of the things we had to do was weed, of course, and when I was weeding as a young child, I remember having my first existential crisis because I would weed a row, and then I'd be back in that same row like 2 weeks later, and there'd be all these weeds again, and I was like, where are these weeds coming from? It was this major crisis. And there was also this thing that was happening while we were weeding where all 4 of us brothers were tracking the progress of each other. You know what I'm talking about? Because today Mom would say we're weeding the corn. So we'd each get a row, and I'd maybe be near the end of my row, working under the hot sun, and I'd look over my shoulder, and there would be X, Y, or Z brother, I won't name names, who would be playing in the dirt, or throwing rocks at a target, and they'd maybe have covered a couple feet. And so I would do what every child does in that situation. Mom, right? So-and-so's not weeding. The thing about tattling is it usually backfires. As I learned as a parent, parents don't like tattletales. And so what my mom would often say in those situations was, well, why don't you go help them? Dang it. So I learned to just keep my mouth shut and my head down and weed the row. There's something like that happening here in this story, right? Martha comes to Jesus, you kind of feel like there's at least that tone there. Now, I think the poetry we've looked at, the art we've talked about, does begin to challenge some of that a little bit, and we'll talk more about that as we go along. But there certainly is a tension here. And I think when I've encountered this story in the past, and maybe this is true for you too if you have encountered this story, you leave your encounter feeling like, oh, the point that Jesus is making is that we all have to be like Mary all the time. That Mary is right and Martha is wrong, and we must choose who we're going to be in this life. Mary or Martha? Which one will you be, But is that what Jesus is saying? Is it one or the other? I think the point of this passage is not that we must always be like Mary, but instead that there are moments in our lives when we need to choose the way of Mary. It is the better way, but it's not always the way. And so the work that we must do, and this is challenging, is ensure that both Mary's way and Martha's way are a regular part of our journey. To flesh this out a little bit more, I want to get to the two words for today, which are action and contemplation. And here's the claim I want to make this morning, that our spiritual journey, your spiritual journey, requires both. If we only have one and not the other, we will find ourselves hamstrung, I think. Action and contemplation. Let's start with action, which in this story Martha seems to embody, right? Did you catch that? She owns the home, the text tells us. That's an interesting little fact. And she stands in a long line of women in the New Testament who play an integral role, like a central role in the ministry of Jesus, and then in the formation of the early church. In fact, in Luke's Gospel, which we're reading from today, just a few chapters earlier, we read this. Soon afterward, Jesus began a tour of the nearby towns and villages, preaching and announcing the good news about the kingdom of God. He took his 12 disciples, we know about them, along with some women who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases. Among them were Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons, Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's business manager, Susanna, and many others who were contributing from their own resources to support Jesus and his disciples. Martha is one of many women who traveled with Jesus and bankrolled his ministry. Did you know this? I didn't learn this until very much late into my life. Somehow I just read past it, or I don't know how, but I missed it. Martha, like many others, is a disciple. And you may say, well, no, there were 12 disciples. Yes, there were 12 disciples. But we know from the text that there were many more disciples. And as Luke 8 would say, some of them were women. And if you're not sure about this, just go back about 30 verses in chapter 10. Chapter 10 starts with the sending of these 72 disciples, right? So Jesus has this larger group of people who are traveling with him. Are they all there all the time? That we're not entirely sure about, but it's more than the 12. And these disciples here in Luke 8 and in other places here in our story today with Martha opening up her home, what we see is that these disciples were people of action. Okay? They gave of their resources. They opened up their homes. And so when Jesus arrives here in Luke 10, the text tells us that Martha is worried and distracted with many things. That's one English translation. This word, many things, comes from this Greek word you see up here, diakonia. Does that sound or remind you of an English word, perhaps? Any guesses? I heard it. Deacon. Yeah, deacon. We get our English word deacon from this. Now, I know you and I don't use deacon as in our common kind of everyday world, but you have heard deacon, right? Especially if you've been in church, probably a pretty good chance. This word, it ranges in meaning in the New Testament from service to ministry. Those are probably the most common ways it gets translated. So in the New Testament, when it's talking about Paul's ministry of reconciliation, it's diakonia, his diakonia of reconciliation. Or his ministry of preaching the gospel, again, it's this diakonia, his diakonia of preaching the gospel. When we read about the early church's effort to feed people who were poor or widows, it's the diakonia of the early church. It's the ministry. It's the service. 34 times this word is used. I read them all this week. I don't normally do this, but I did because I was curious. Are there any instances where this word means like meaningless, busy work? Is it ever used in that way? Never. It is always used to describe the service and ministry of someone or a group of people. It is important work that it describes. And so when we come to Martha, don't you imagine her doing busy work? Isn't that kind of the impression you get? And I want to just push back on that a little bit today. Not to necessarily say that Martha wasn't doing things like making a meal, as that poem suggested as an option, but to view that work maybe differently. To not view it as busy work, but to view it as ministry, as essential work to the ministry of Jesus. Jesus doesn't have a home. They have no HQ, you know. They travel and they go wherever hospitality leads them. And so Martha, if that is what she's doing, is making food for them, she's doing an essential work for the life of Jesus and those who travel with him. All that to say, Martha is a person of action. And she's doing important, valuable work, right? If you're still not sure about this, if you think, well, hold on, the story, Jesus says clearly that Mary's chosen the better portion. Doesn't that mean that Mary's right and Martha's wrong? Well, I would just invite you to think about the story that we read last week. Because immediately prior to this story of Mary and Martha is the story of the Good Samaritan, which is all about doing. It ends with these words, go and do the same. It's a story about action, right? So that story's right there, and then we turn not even the page, and we have this story about Mary and Martha. So action, love in action, compassion, generosity, sacrifice, this is the way of Jesus and of his followers. And contemplation. Jesus does say, in this moment, Mary has chosen the better portion or part. This is where our English translations, I don't know if they always do us justice. I think the one that I had Sarah read, thank you, Sarah, it says something like, there's one thing, you know, that Mary has chosen, or it's like the one thing. It kind of gives that impression. I'm not sure. The Greek literally reads better portion, as in there's like a pie, and part of the pie is maybe action, Martha's work, and part of the pie is contemplation, what Mary shows us. And in this moment, Mary has chosen the better way. Why would Jesus say that? I mean, we don't know for sure. Here's my guess. Where's Jesus going? Do you remember? He's going to Jerusalem. From Jericho up the road that he preached about in the Good Samaritan, by the way, coincidentally, to Jericho, to Jerusalem for the last time. Yes? This is where we are in the story. Let's just kind of orient ourselves. He's going to Jerusalem for the last time. He's going there to die. He knows this. He knows, he's in Bethany, that's where Mary and Martha live. It's like a couple hours walk. He's right on the edge. He's in the suburbs of Jerusalem, okay? He is hours away from his final moments and all that entails. I wonder if Jesus, knowing that, isn't saying, listen, I'm not here much longer. And you might not actually, you won't have me in your home again. You don't know that. But perhaps the better portion in this moment is to choose the way of Mary. What does Mary choose? The text says that Martha had a sister named Mary who sat at Jesus' feet and listened to what he was saying. Sat at Jesus' feet. Someone mentioned that a woman would not have gotten that close to a rabbi, a teacher in that day, and that's right. Sitting at the feet of someone is the posture of a disciple. This is an idiom used to describe what disciples do. They sit at the feet of their rabbi, and they listen, and they take in, and they contemplate, right? And this is what Mary is doing. So Mary is close, as someone said. And she is attentive, and she is open. In other words, she is contemplative. She is a contemplative. I think that contemplation is a word we've probably heard, but I don't know that we know quite how to define it always. It maybe is a word that's a little slippery or a little hard to nail down. So I want to offer some definitions from Richard Rohr, who, if you know me, if you've been around here any length of time, I like to talk about Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr has been a significant influence in my spiritual journey. This is how he talks about contemplation. It's an exercise in openness, in keeping all three spaces open, heart space, mind space, body space, at the same time. It's openness. Or contemplation is a panoramic, receptive awareness whereby you take in all that the situation, the moment, the event offers, oh, here's the hard part, without judging or eliminating or labeling anything, up or down, good or bad. True contemplation is not a matter of trying to achieve anything, ruh-roh. It's a matter of recognizing what already is. Contemplation is pure presence, or maybe this might be the best one, a long, loving look at the real. Let's keep this up here. And I want to hear from you. Like, what strikes you about how he goes about trying to put words to contemplation? What strikes you? What questions does it raise? It doesn't describe our time? Does not describe our times. It's probably fair. Yeah, Katie? That's right. Yeah, contemplation is it runs directly against the currents of our culture. Yep. Yeah, contemplation has a much stronger connection to Catholicism than it does to Protestantism, and certainly than it does to evangelicalism. I think that's probably generally true. And so people might be, who are in the evangelical stream, you're saying, might be hesitant to, engage something like this potentially. I think that's probably generally right or possible. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. Janelle saying contemplation, we maybe often think of it as going inward. And Rohr's actually saying, not that he's not saying that maybe, but these examples I gave certainly are an expansive, panoramic look, holding all things. Yep. Yeah, Kevin? That's right. Yep. That's right. So your experience, if you had one of contemplation, was actually to figure out right or wrong, good or bad, up or down. Yeah, I think that's right too. Yeah, our rational upbringing wants to do exactly that, wants to divide and figure out and solve. And that's not necessarily the point here. Yeah. Contemplation, holding the tension between the opposites, trying to sit in that space in between. Yeah. Why would we do that? Not just asking you, Nate. Like, if we're trying to talk about what contemplation is, why does it matter? Why would it be valuable? Yeah. Yeah, it feels ancient. Contemplation feels ancient in this world that we live in that's constantly on and constantly going. Mm-hmm. So it's a break from that. It's a break from our world, you're saying? Mm-hmm. That's right, yeah. Yeah, Krista? Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Appreciate that. So Chris is highlighting curiosity's role. I would say that that's super important in this. If you're going to have a panoramic view and not start labeling everything, which is a move that our intellect wants to do, then you have to be curious. Or that's one way of not getting stuck in that rut that we get in. Is like, okay, this is what is. Huh. Why do I feel that way in this moment? I wonder why that's happening in the way that it is. It's this curiosity is really powerful. Thanks, Krista. It could be. I think you could call this probably a variety of names, and you can pick whatever name's most helpful to you. I think that some people's definition of meditation might not necessarily be the same as what we're talking about here. So I would just kind of come back to the things that we're talking about, which is this long, loving look at the real. Yeah, we can be hesitant. Some folks can be hesitant about anything that sounds too new agey. Mm-hmm. This might fall into that camp for some. Yep. We're trying to reclaim it a little bit today, potentially. And you know what? If you don't like the word, don't use it. Find something else. I don't care. That's not the point. The point is having space in our life when we are practicing this type of posture. Mm. Yep. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right, right. Appreciate that. I think most people were able to hear you, I hope, anyway. I couldn't probably sum that all up nicely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. So humility maybe is a really important ingredient here. Yep. Yep. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I maybe there's a small percentage of us that naturally kind of um, move in this space easily, but I think it's a very small number of us for different reasons. It might be our personality. It might just be the culture that we're all a part of that's constantly sweeping us along. It might be pain and trauma. It could be all sorts of reasons that keep us from entering this type of space, which requires, again, humility, curiosity, openness. Those are very vulnerable things. So you can understand, hey, you're going to pick action or contemplation? Let's take a poll. I bet action is going to win. Even though we might want it, I think just naturally we're going to default to that if we're choosing between the two. Let's talk for a moment about some examples. In your bulletin is an example of a 5 to 10 minute breath or heart prayer. So if you would like to practice something this week, we have something that you could begin with there in the bulletin. You could, and I could, sit at the feet of Jesus like Mary did. Lectio Divina is just Google it if you don't know what it is, or ask ChatGPT to create a Lectio Divina routine for you. You can find this out there. It's all over the place. That's one way of engaging the scriptures in a contemplative way. Not trying to solve anything or intellectualize or analyze, but to be open and curious and ready for what God may want to say. A walk. Some of you need to be, or are helped by being mobile. Some of you are helped by the created world. The created world is a doorway through which you encounter the divine. And so, not just a walk to get your steps in, but a walk in which you go out the door and say, I am on this walk going to do my best to be attentive. And maybe I'm going to have a little mantra I'm just going to keep saying to myself. I am loved. God is good. I mean, you pick the mantra, but I'm just going to keep coming back to that as I walk and see what I notice. Finding your favorite spot in your house, at a coffee. It doesn't matter where it is. It's more about, it does maybe matter a little bit. Don't go sit in the construction zone. That's probably going to be difficult. Quietly sitting. For some people, being, again, active. When I play the piano, not to get better, not to hone a skill and practice my skills, but just to sit down. I can't do this. This is not me. But some of you are this way, or with another creative outlet, and that is it can be. Okay, what else? Any other ideas come to mind? Did a labyrinth? The irony of you mentioning that is that it is actually set up today. No joke, it hasn't been set up in, I don't know, 10 years. And it's set up today in the basement, and we were going to say if anyone wants to go down there and walk the labyrinth, You could walk the labyrinth today. So Deb, I don't know what wavelength we're on here, but we're tracking. Okay. We'll pay you later. Yep. Visio Divina. Yep. Very good. Thank you. So Lectio Divina, engaging the text. Visio Divina, engaging a piece of art. We did that earlier, but you could do that as well. Maybe that's an easier doorway for you to enter into a space like this. Okay. I think, to JP's point, the hopeful move is that we flex this muscle enough that when you are in the middle of your everyday life chugging along and something interrupts the normal flow, you can be contemplative in that moment and go, I normally react this way. Can I hold some open, curious space here? Can I lovingly look at this real moment in front of me and ask what it has to teach me? But that takes practice. And that's why carving out space is usually needed for most of us. Sorry, I don't know. I mean, again, maybe a small percentage of us don't need practice, but I think most of us probably do. So then you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't fit one more thing into my life. I hear you. Which is why these examples maybe, I hope, start to like open the door of your imagination. I'm talking about a lot of open doors today, unintentionally, but it seems to fit. An open door of your imagination to just think about this differently. It can mean sitting quietly in a room in your home with no one else around. Yes, but it can take place in other spaces too. So action and contemplation. Richard Rohr again founded the Center for Action and Contemplation about 40 years ago in New Mexico. And he's been quoted many times as saying, the most important word in our center's name is and. And Thomas Merton, who's another mystic, another person who I would commend to you, says that action without contemplation, ignore the second action, action without contemplation becomes shallow and reactive. Or I would say action without contemplation becomes unsustainable. When we are not rooted in what is real, and if that's what contemplation is, a long, loving look at the real. If we're not rooted in what is real and what is deep and what is true, you and I are going to get tossed around in this world. Anybody feeling tossed around lately? It's like most of what I feel these days is tossed around. You and I have to be rooted in something deeper. And the incredible, really, like honestly unbelievable reality is that there is something deeper to be rooted to. And it is available to us. The source of life, the sacred spirit, God. We try to use lots of language to get at this deep, profound truth. It is available to us. But God never forces God's self on us. We have to willingly do what Mary did and sit at the feet of Jesus, open, attentive. So action without contemplation, I think, becomes shallow, reactive, unsustainable. Merton also said contemplation without action becomes, or risks becoming self-absorbed. Right, all we're doing is kind of going inward to our little quiet space, and we're thinking about ourselves. And, you know, contemplation can become quite inwardly focused, as Janelle was saying, for sure. But when you are letting that contemplation move you out into the world, it will move you out in a way that is loving, which involves other people, which involves sacrifice and generosity. So both and, action and contemplation. And I think, the work that we have to do is to ensure that both are a regular part of our journey. So, enough of me talking. Up here, we did this last week, we'll do this again every week of Lent. We're just going to give some space for you to think about what your intention and, surprise, surprise, I guess, your action might be as a result of what we're talking about today. Intention meaning, what do I hope for, given what we've talked about, given this story of Mary and Martha? What would I like to be different? Where would I like to move? That's kind of the intention question. And then the action, of course, is, well, then what might be a step for me to start moving in that direction toward that intention? So this week, the color is green. No particular purpose, but every week was a different color of paper, and we're just going to keep filling these up. Up on the tables up here are just the most adorable little clothespins. So you can grab these out of the bowl, and you can clothespin your piece of paper to one of the strings. Teresa also pointed out to me, I missed this, black and white. Anybody want to guess what color these are? They're gray. Yep. Purposeful, Teresa, way to go. Right, we're trying to stand in that tension. So let's take a few minutes to reflect, to write. If we'd like to put them up here, you of course can hang on to them and take them home if you prefer. And then we'll move into communion in a few minutes after we've had the chance to do that. this, in the elements of this meal, but of course also taking a long, loving look at what these things tell us, that we are loved, that God pursues us, that God's willing to go off and search for the one, that God meets us wherever we are. So we hold both here as we come to the table. You're welcome to join us in this meal. There's no pressure to do it, of course, but you are welcome. Everyone is welcome to share in the gifts of this table. We do need a few folks to help serve, and so if anyone would be willing to do that, you can come on up. We should probably start paying you two for how often you do this. Katie and Jen, it would be great to have you too. You guys want to head to the back? Many thanks. Katie, would you do this? Thank you. And we won't want to mess people up. Usually the juice is over there. I know it's hard. Change is hard. Friends, the gifts of God for you, the people of God, let's come and share this meal together. You are loved always. There is nothing you can do to separate you from God's love. There is no circumstance in your life that can separate you. May this bread remind us of that truth. Let's take and eat. This is a cup poured out. Think about that image, a pouring out, an emptying, a giving away. Jesus does that for us, but then, of course, calls us to do the same. May we remember that as we take and drink. we'll pass these baskets around. You can place your cup in there, and we'll collect them in the back. We're going to sing one more song here to begin to close our time. Thanks to Kevin and JP and Zeke for doing that. We invite you to stand as we do if you're able.
Oh, good shepherd, would you teach me how to rest? I'm rushing on, will you make me to lie down? Will you build a fold by the waters that refresh? Will you call my name and lead me safely out? From my anxious drive to labor on and on, from the restless grind that has put my mind to sleep, will you call me back and gently slow me down? Will you show me now what to lose and what to keep? Oh, good shepherd, and oh, good friend, slow me down, slow me down. And oh, good shepherd, and oh, good friend, slow me down, slow me down. When my table's bent with only greed and gold, and my grasping hands are afraid you won't provide, will you pour the wine that loosens up my hold? Set your table here with what truly satisfies. Oh, good shepherd, and oh, good friend, slow me down, slow me down. And oh, good shepherd, and oh, good friend, slow me down, slow me down. On the busy streets trying to make myself a name, if the work is yours, there's nothing I can claim. Will you lead me home to the pastures of your peace? The house is yours, I'm sitting at your feet. Oh, good shepherd, and oh, good friend, slow me down, slow me down. And oh, good shepherd, and oh, good friend, slow me down, slow me down.
A good prayer, to be sure, as we close our time. I want to quickly just mention someone in our community who we love deeply. Chris usually sits kind of back there on that side if you don't know who Chris is. He had a major surgery this week to relieve some pain on his spine. This was a planned surgery. He's been in a ton of pain, really debilitating stuff the last few months, and he already is free of that pain. It's incredible. It's one of these surgeries where the relief is, if it goes well, and it has, is immediate. Now, he has to be pretty much immobile for weeks and weeks. Can't lift more than 5 pounds, can't drive a car, can't be in a car actually for a bit here. So we have a meal train set up for him. We'll email it out tomorrow. So keep an eye on that in your email for tomorrow. But he is doing well. I want you to know that, as well as one can after a surgery like that. Okay. There is a Lent guide on the back table. I saw someone go and grab one. They're a great resource. Teresa mentioned them. They have the artwork and other written pieces and stuff. It's a nice way to move through Lent together. Those are on the back table. We wanted to remind you of that. Okay. I think that's all I need to say other than this. May you be people this week who have the eyes to take a long, loving look at the real. And in doing so, not turn inward, but then move and become people of action, people of love in the world. Be those people this week. Amen. Thanks for being here, everybody.